Oh, all right. Welcome everyone to our online session today. Uh, another Saturday, another session with an special guest, and this is Arash Agajani from Vancouver, Canada. It's morning here, and it's 9 a.m. around in the Vancouver. I'm going to host today's session. We have a special guest, David Lorenzo, and we have a great topic for today. And great presentation about the Power Platform pipeline. So, before we start our today's session, I'm going to introduce a little bit about our community, as ever. So this is the third session for the September that Lorenzo will learn and talk about, the how to launch Power Platform pipeline. And it's a great session. And the next session and the last session for the September will be about how to become a business application superstar in 5 steps. And Nicole will actually talk about this topic in the next week. This is our plan, and for the September. So I will line up our October session next week, and I will publish the session calendar in our LinkedIn page and the Power Platform Learner to Leader learning room. So you can follow up the learning room and also our LinkedIn page to see the upcoming session for the upcoming months. So a little bit about the Microsoft Learn community. So the Microsoft Learn community offers various ways for learners connect with peers and experts to enhance their expertise and achieve career goals. It includes the Microsoft Learn Hub for updates and discussion, and learning rooms for direct engagement on specific topics. Access the community through the provided link for more information and to join. So aka.ms/learning rooms. So you will have access to the Microsoft learning rooms, and you can join and engage with the other learn expert and technology enthusiasts through the learning rooms. Power Platform Learner to Leader is one of the Microsoft learning rooms, which has more than 2,000 members. We are sharing the latest information about Power Platform in our learning room, and also conduct this series of session every Saturday for Power Platform enthusiasts. So if you are not a member of our tech community, join through the link below this one, the aka.ms/join PPLTL, Power Platform Learner to Leader. Okay, and the last slide is our code of conduct. So Microsoft aims to empower everyone globally through knowledge sharing and events, ensuring a respectful and inclusive environment for all. Harassment or degrading behavior is not tolerated, and everyone is responsible for upholding these standards. The code of conduct encourages awareness, friendliness, and respect, openness, understanding, and kindness. So before we begin, a few important notes here. If you have any question during the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat box. We will have a dedicated Q&A session around the 5 or 10 minutes based on our question at the end. And this session is being recorded for those who couldn't join us live, and will be available shortly in Power Platform Learner to Leader YouTube channel. So that's all at my end, and I'm going to hand it over to you, David Lorenzo, to start your presentation. And yeah, that's it. Hello.
Hello, Aras. How are you?
Good. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Very well, thank you, and thank you for having my session here. It is
Oh,
a pleasure for me
it's my
to
pleasure. It's
be
my pleasure.
here with all the Power Platform Learner to Leader, and hope the session will be interesting for all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm interested. Actually, I'm excited to learn from you today around about the Power Platform pipeline because I'm currently working with Power Platform pipeline for our client. So I would like to know some things new from you today. Let's get started.
Hope so. Okay, thank you, Aras. So I'm here today. As I said, I am David Lorenzo. I am from Canary Island in Spain. I recently awarded with the Microsoft MVP of Business Apps category, and I work as a Power Platform lead in Prodware in Spain. And here I will share with you today a new session. I have been working with Power Platform pipelines since the beginning of this new module of Power Platform some years ago. And I am uh, be extending the native functionality to be integrate a new process in which we can extend the functionality to improve the deployment process in our organization. So what we'll see today is, in first of all, we will see what are the pipelines, what functionality it will allow us to do inside the Power Platform environments. Then we will go through the different features that the pipelines have currently, and then we will see how we can extend the basic functionality to get a better result and a better ALM process in Power Platform. Finally, I will see, I will have a demo with all the functionality that I am explaining today. Okay, so what are pipelines? So pipelines is a service that allow makers, admins, and developers to democratize ALM within automation and continuous integration and continuous deployment. What this means? We as developers, as admin managers inside the Power Platform, we can have a big team of developers, some of them pro developers, some of them citizen developers, some administrators, and we want all of them to have a single deployment flow between environments. So we need to ensure that the solutions get deployed from the development environments to the downstream environments, testing environments, production environments in a unified way, without errors and without disalignment of the solution in the different environment. So with Power Platform pipelines, we will get this done in a few easy steps that we will see today. Okay, some of the features I want to mention are solution alignment. What this means is that we are developing a solution in the development environment, and we want this solution gets deployed to the testing environment or production environment. But we want that there is no difference in the solution content in between the different environments. So if we do a manual deployment, or if we allow to edit this solution in the production environment, for example, we can end up with difference between the solution content in production and the solution content in development. So this is a bad situation in our development process, because it will end up with regression bugs in our code. So we can fix a bug in production, we don't fix in development, and then we will deploy some days in advance. We will deploy again from development to production, and uh, we will lost the change that we did in production. So with Power Platform pipelines, we can get the solution alignment between the different environments because we block the customization in the testing environment, in the production environment, and we always deploy through the pipelines. We can add also deployment constraints. For example, one of them is that we can configure that we can't deploy from development to production directly without having deployed from development to the testing environment. So we are blocking the user and forcing him to deploy to the testing environment first. Then when the testing team, the QA team, validates the development, we can we can deploy from testing to production. Okay, so this is one of the deployment constraints that we can add to our pipeline. Security role. So we don't want anyone in the environment having the system administrator role. So what we want to have is different roles for the different developers that we have in the team. With Power Platform pipelines, we get two new roles in the environment. We get a deployment user role and we get a deployment administrator role. So we can assign the deployment user role to the makers and to the developers that only need to access the pipeline to run it. And we can add the deployment administrator role to the environment administrator or the pipeline administrator that this role will need to create pipelines, edit pipelines, add new deployment stage, and review the history runs and so on. So this allow us to configure the pipelines in a more secure way without the needing to assign a system administrator role to any user. Extension point, this is our main topic today. We will see how we can extend the deployment flow in different ways, in different points of the pipeline to add functionality. In today's session, we will add approvals, we will add continuous integration from the pipeline in Power Platform to the DevOps repo. We will combine the Power Platform pipeline with the Azure DevOps pipeline to get this done. And we will also add a delegated deployment using a service principal. Okay, this will allow us to set the ownership of the artifacts that are deployed from dev to testing, for example, to the application user and not to the user that runs the pipeline, which is one of the problems that it was on the beginning of this module, Power Platform pipeline, when it was first released to Power Platform. Okay, and finally, we will have also analytics and history of deployment, so we can review past deployments. We can see problems that can happen in the past. We can have also statistics of the runs, how many runs of every stage, and so on. So we have also the possibility to analyze this information and take decision from it. Of course, we can use the interface to do all of this, but we can also use the CLI. The CLI for the moment has only two commands. One for list the different pipelines in the environment. So the first one here, and also will allow us to list the deployment stage of a pipeline, a selected pipeline. So if we run this first command, we will list all the pipelines in the environment. If we run the second one, I will list all the stage of the selected pipeline. And last, we can use the deploy command to launch a deploy of a pipeline. Okay, so the deploy will ask us for the environment name. We will need to state the solution name that we want to deploy. We need to list the stage ID that we can get from the first command, from the second command. And we can also set the current version of the solution and the new version of the solution. And the wait flag indicates that we want to do sync deploy instead of an async deploy. So with these commands, we of course can integrate the pipeline deployment from a PowerShell console. So we can integrate these steps into a DevOps pipeline, for example. If we want to launch the deployment from DevOps, we can do it with these CLI commands. Okay, when we think about to create a new environment or create a new project, we need to be aware of the environment strategies that we want to select. So we have two main options. Of course, there is more, but I will recommend to choose one of these. The first one is that we have a development environment where all of our developers are creating the solutions, and we have the downstream environments. In this case, I state here two downstream environments that are UAT and Pro, but we can have more of them. And in this case, we have a separated build environment, which is the one on the top. So this environment will host the Power Platform Pipelines application. And in this environment, we will configure all the deployment process. So the developers will make its developments in the dev environment, and all the pipelines will be launched from the development environment to the UAT and production environments, but the configuration of the pipelines will be done in the build environment. So here is the recommendation for the environment types. The build, UAT, and production, we recommend to do sandbox or production environment type. Of course, production should be production. And development environment can be the type of development, sandbox, or production. In this case, we have to be aware also that the downstream environment, so the target environment where we are deploying our solutions, must be managed environments. So we have to enable the managed environments in the target environments. Okay, and the other environment strategy is where we only have development environment and UAT and production environment. So we can host the application pipeline really in the dev environment without the need of creating a build environment. This is something new in a few months ago. The last update from Power Platform Pipelines from Microsoft, they allow us to use the development environment for hosting the pipelines application. So we save one environment in our tenant. Again, in this case, we need to be aware of the target environment being managed, and also the type of environment. We recommend also sandbox or production for UAT and Pro, and dev, sandbox, or production for the development environment. In our case, in our demo, we will choose this strategy. So we will have dev environment and UAT. In this case, we don't use production because the deployment process is the same. So we will see how to deploy from development to UAT and how to extend the pipeline in this process. So the roles and permissions, as I stated before, there is two roles that are added to the environment when we install the Power Platform Pipelines application. The user role will allow the users with this role to execute, to run the pipeline that have been shared with them. So we have to share the pipeline with the makers, assign the deployment pipeline user role, and then they can run this pipeline. And the deployment pipeline administrator has full control over the pipelines. It doesn't need to be a system administrator. And so this is a secure way we can assign the user to the permission to create pipelines, to manage the pipelines without the need to be a system administrator with the risk it has. Okay, so yeah, the last thing for the users to run the pipelines, they must have, apart from having the deployment pipeline user role, they must have permission to export solutions in the development environment, and they must have permission to import solution into the target environment. So if we go back to here, in order a user to deploy from dev to UAT, a user without being the system administrator, the user must have the deployment pipeline user role. We have to share the pipeline with that user. And then we have to give it permission to export solution from dev and import solution into UAT. So we are now going to see the data model that the deployment pipeline application installs into the environment, into the host environment, when we install the application, and how we extend this model to configure the approval system. So in this case, the deployment pipeline use the blue tables that we can see in this schema, and we are adding the red table to this schema in order to configure the deployment approvals users. So as you can see, the deployment pipeline, every pipeline is a row here in the deployment pipeline table, which is linked to a deployment stage, okay? And this stage will have so the pipeline can have more than one stage, and the stage will save every run that we do. So a stage is, for example, a deployment from development to UAT, and every time we run this stage, we save a record here in the deployment state run. Okay, we are also keeping the artifact, which is the solution file we are deploying, and we have also a status of the deployment that it can be success, fail, or so on. So we are adding a new table called deployment pipeline configuration, which is linked to a deployment stage. And here we can configure the deployment, the approval users that are allowed to approve the deployment. In this case, we will see how they approve the deployment from a Teams application. So what are the extension points? We have 3 extension points in the pipeline that we can intercept via a business event, and will allow us to do different things in the process of the deployment. So the first one is a pre-export step. So if we check this business event to be mandatory, we have to create a Power Automate flow that will intercept this business event. It will need to update the status of the business event in order to allow the pipeline to continue deploying or to fail. So we need to intercept the business event. we need to do some actions that we want to do, and then we need to update the status of the deployment to allow the pipeline to continue deploying, or to fail the pipeline and notify the user that the process has been interrupted. So in the pre-export step required, we can do things before the solution is exported from the development environment. Okay, we need to think about some action, maybe some approval action, maybe some validation action on the solution file. So we can run here some custom validation process, for example, and then we can fail the process if the validation are not good. With the second business event is delegated deployment. This is the one we will use. We allow some things. So we allow to deploy the solution using a service principal, or using the owner account of the deployment stage. We will use a service principal later on. And we allow also, in this case, we will do the approval process. So we'll send the approval request to a Microsoft Teams application. The user will approve or reject the deployment, and then we approve or fail the process in the Power Automate flow. Also from here, if the deployment is approved, we will connect to DevOps API in order to complete and export the solution to the repository and do a continuous integration flow. So we will see this in the demo later. And the last but not the least business event is a pre-deployment step required. So this allow us to add another extension point before the deployment really starts. So here the deployment has not been started yet, and we can add, for example, a second validation, a second approval, and exporting the solution file to an external system, connect to an external API in order to do some validations. Everything we need, we can do it in this last business event. Here we see the schema of all the process that I have mentioned. We can see the blue squares are the gates, the business events that the Power Automate allow us to extend. So we can capture these events, and we can decide if we continue the deployment. So we have to update the status to 20, or if we stop the deployment in this step. So in this case, we send a status of 30. In case we send the status 20, we update this Dataverse unbound action. The pipeline will continue to go down, and then we can capture the next business event, data approval status, and we can decide again if we failed this business action or we approve this business action, and then the pipeline will continue down until the end. So it will success or it will fail and notify the user. So this is the full schema that currently we are allowed to intercept every point. And finally, it's done. We will see all the demo process where I will start to showing you the configuration of the pipeline. Okay, let's switch here. This is the development environment. Okay, so in the first, we have a blank environment. the first thing we need to do is to go to the admin center and install the Power Platform pipeline. The Power Platform pipeline in the development environment. So we go here. We go to the host environment. In this case, is the dev environment. We go to resource, dynamics, apps, and we need to be sure that the Power Platform pipeline is installed in the environment. So we go down and we see that it's installed. There is an update available, but it's installed. If it is not installed, we go here, install app, and we find the application here and we install the application. Once it's installed and provisioned, we will have new application here. Is called deployment pipeline configuration. So if we go inside the application, in this application, we can configure all the pipelines, all the environments, and all the deployment stage. So in this case, I have created a new pipeline, which is called Power Platform Ninja pipeline. And inside this pipeline, we have the deployment stage. Deployment stage. So for the pipeline, we of course give it a name. We can enable the AI deployment nodes. This is only available in the US environment. So that's why I created the environment in the US for this demo. But of course, it will be soon available for the rest of the world. We can create then the deployment stage. In this case, I have only one deployment stage called dev to UAT. If we go into the deployment stage, we will see how we give it a name. We link to the pipeline and we select the target deployment environment ID. So first of all, we have registered here the different environment. To register an environment, we give it the environment type. So if we try to register the new one, we give it, if it is a development environment, in this case, we will be allowed to deploy from this environment. If it is a target environment, we are only allowed to deploy to this environment, not from this environment. So in this case, we have two environments, dev and UAT. Dev is the development environment. UAT is a target environment. And we only have to set up the environment ID, which we can get it from here, from the session details. Okay, so we go back. We have dev environment, UAT environments. So we go to the pipeline, we go to deployment stage, we go to dev to UAT, and we can see that we select the target environment. So we will deploy from dev to UAT, and then we check this is delegated deployment. If we remember from the schema that we see before, we can see that is delegated deployment is one of the extension points that we are talking about. So in this case, by selecting that and configuring the service principal, this is the service principal ID, and we will deploy using the service principal. In this case, we are configuring the delegated deployment. So this is all from the application pipeline configuration. We go back and we will see our application. So we have extended the schema, the data model that the deployment, the Power Platform pipeline give us by default. We have added a new table and we have created a model-driven app to manage this table. In this case, we are allowed to configure the approvers that will receive the approved request from every deployment stage. So in this case, we have the team's channel ID where the approval are also published. This is optional, of course. And we configure here the approver emails. We can put several emails separated by a semicolon. And we also have a flag where we indicate that if the solution must be exported to Azure DevOps or not. Because, for example, in a multi-stage pipeline, if we have development, UAT, and production, maybe we are only interested in the export the solution in the first stage. So we are not interested in the export the solution when we are deploying from UAT to production, but only in the first stage from dev to UAT. So we can configure everything here, and then we will see a little bit how we create the flow, in this case, to make all the process. So this is a Power Automate Cloud Flow, which have a trigger on a Dataverse business event. And in this trigger, we will intercept, if we remember here the process, we will intercept this update, this on approval started event, and then we will intercept the update approval status. In order to capture this event, we will create a trigger for a Microsoft Dataverse Common Catalog. The category is Power Platform, and the action name is on approval started, which is this one here. Okay, the first one we do is to get the approval configuration. In this case, it is a fetch XML query that will join deployment stage run table. It will join also the system user table. It will join the deployment environment, and it will join our custom table, deployment pipeline configuration. Okay, we filter out for state code to get only active rows, and we will select the name, the approver email, the channel ID, and the export solution flag from this table. Okay, we are filtering for the deployment stage run ID that we get from the trigger. Okay, we then initialize a Boolean variable in order to allow us to export to DevOps or not. Yeah, so we check here the condition if there is approval configuration values in the table. If there is no values, so that means that the current deployment stage does not have a configuration, an approval configuration, then we approve the deployment because we don't want this to be blocked by default. So we approve the update approval status. We remember the schema here, update approval status with a status 20. So the pipeline will run. We set the flag to true in this case, and we set a post to the Teams channel with all the deployment information here. On the other way, if we have rows in the approval configuration table, we will, in the first step, we will send an approve or reject request to our channels account. So we get the user, that we have configured in the table, and we send the request to that user. So in the case that it approves, in case that it approves, we set again the status to 20. We set also the approval comments, and then the pipeline will flow. In the case of it rejects, we set the status to 30, set the rejects comments, and then the pipeline will fail. And finally, if we have set the flag to export the solution to DevOps, in this case, we connect to the DevOps API via the DevOps connector from Power Automate. We select the organization name, the project name, the build definition ID, and the branch, okay? And then we send the parameters for the pipeline. In this case, we send the solution name and the comments. And this will launch the pipeline from DevOps. So finally, we will see the process, all the process in action. So we have a solution here with some choice, some cloud flows, some connection reference, some variables, and some tables, okay? And we will launch a process, a deploy process here. So the first thing the pipeline is doing is validating the dependencies between the development environment and the UAT environment. In the case that our solution have any missing dependency, it will fail here in the validating process, and then we have all the error descriptions that we want to we have to fix before we can deploy the solution. So this is one of the advantage of using Power Platform pipelines, because we get all the validations before the exporting and importing process is done. And one thing I want to show you also, meanwhile this is validating, is how to configure the service principal in Azure. So we go to Azure, we go to Microsoft Enter ID, and we go to create a new app registration. Okay, this I have created already, but you can do here a new registration. You put a name and you check this multi-tenant box here, and we register. Okay, so when we register the application, we only have to give API permissions. In this case, this is more than permissions than we need. So we don't need all these permissions. We only need the OpenID and profile permission. This is because I use also this service principal for another things. But with the OpenID and profile permission here, and the grant admin consent is okay. And the last thing we need to do is create a secret and put a validation that in the future. And then we need to copy the secret value and the application value. And with these values, we need to go to the admin center here, and we need to go to the UAT and so the dev environment and the UAT environment, and we need to create a new application user here. So we link this with the application that we have just registered in Microsoft Enter ID. So it has to be in the same tenant for this to find the application. And then we select a business unit, and we give a system administrator role to this service principal in order to allow the ownership of the deployments. Okay. So this is yet validating. We can see it's taking so long. We can see also the pipeline in DevOps. So in the end, when we are deploying, we using Power Platform pipelines, we are connecting from here, from the flow, we are connecting with DevOps in order to export the solution to the repository. So in the end, we get a repository with the solution folder exported here with all the entities and all the environment variable definitions and all the option sets, the workflows, and so on. So let's, oh yeah, here. So in the end, we have a pipeline here that will run every time that we call it from the flow. And this pipeline is doing exporting. This pipeline will connect to the environment using the same service principle that we have just seen, and will do different actions in order to upload the solution to the repository. In the first one, it will export the solution as a managed solution. It will save it in a temp folder inside the pipeline host, and then it will unpack the solution to a folder, and then using a command line script, we will commit all the change to the repository using the comments variable that we are passing here as parameters. So we pass two parameters, the solution name, the solution internal name, and the comments that we'll use here in the solution name here. This is a variable received through the API, and the comments here in order to set the commit comment. So let's go to deploy. You can see the validation has been done, and we can also check here. We have environment variable in the solution and connection reference. We can check this box, and then we can adjust or reconnect or change the variable values before we deploy to the target environment. In this case, we are connected to Dataverse, so the connection is okay, but we of course can add a new connection here if we want. We check, this is very important, we check this box because we need to share all the connection with the service principal in order the service principal to be allowed to use them in the target environment. So we hit next. Then we have a single environment variable. We set the value. If in the case we want to change the value for the UAT environment, we set the new value here, and then we hit next. Here you can see the AI deployment generated nodes. If we want to leave it, I will just put demo deployment comment here, and then hit deploy. So in this moment, the process is starting through here, going down the pipeline in the different stages. So as we haven't checked this stage in the stage configuration, we can see it here. We go to this stage. We haven't checked the pre-export step required here, so it won't stop here. So it will continue down. And as we have checked the is delegated deployment, it will stop here. It will stop in this on approval started business event. And then this will launch the flow that we have checked before. This will launch the flow, and then we will receive a deployment approval request in our teams, and then we have to approve or reject. We can see the deployment stage run, and we can see also the solution artifact file. We see also here is the approval request. So the flow is already launched. As you can see here, is running and is stopped in the start and approval request. So if we go to the teams, we will see a new request for approval. And here we can see the solution name, the solution version. We can go and click here and go to the deployment stage run. We have all the information here. We have also the schedule time, but this is because we can schedule the deployment for a moment in the future. And then here is the comment that I have added when I have hit deploy. So this is the comment that the maker or the developer is adding when deploying the solution. So we can add also an approval or deny comment. So I approve it and then hit approve. In this moment, the approval is going back to the flow, and it will allow the process to continue down. So we set the update approval status to 20, as we see in the schema. Here we set 20, and the approval, the deployment process will continue down to the next step. As we haven't checked this step, and here pre-deployment step required is not checked, so it won't stop here. It will continue down, and then if everything goes well, it will success the deployment and will export the solution to DevOps. So now the deployment is the pipeline is importing the solution into the UAT environment. And if we go to DevOps, we should see a new run here. As we can see, the pipeline is running. We have started from the Power Automate flow here. Is successfully started. And then the pipeline will be in charge of export the solution from the development environment, unpack the solution, and with this command line, push it to the repo. So if we go to the repo, we go to commits, and we see here a new commit with the same comment that I have added in the deployment process here in the pipeline. So in the end, we get a new version added to the repo. Okay, there is no change. The only change is the version. But of course, we could see here all the change that we have added to the different solution artifacts. And we have all the commit history here. And then we have also in the files, we will have the new files of the solution gets uploaded here. So we can go back to any version of the solution if we wish. Yeah, and the end we get this is jet deploying to UAT. It usually takes about 5 or 6 minutes. So we are waiting then to deploy, but with this the process will finish in a moment. In the meanwhile, I go to show you some resources that you can take. In the first one, I recommend you to take a look at this article in Microsoft Learn of where you can read about the overview of pipelines, all the different features that it have. Then once you understand what pipelines are, you can read this article to learn how to set up the pipelines. So this is the first part of the demo I show you. Install the application and configure all the pipelines configurations. And in the end, you can read this article in order to extend the pipeline. I show you some extension points that you can use, some extension ideas, but of course there are more. There is one interesting that where you can use GitHub Actions in order to deploy to GitHub instead of deploying to DevOps, as I have done. And there is also another ideas you can take as connecting to an external API and so on. So let's take a look here if the process is currently deploying yet. We can go to the UAT environment here and UAT, and we can see the solution history. We can see that it really have uh, finalized. So we go here, and then we should see it's deployed a few seconds ago. We go to the history, we see that this hour and the deployment comments and the approval comments also here. I approve it. So this is the complete process we have seen today. Hope this is of your interest. And in Spanish now, muchas gracias. Aras, back to you.
Thank you so much. What does that mean? Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
It's thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So it was interesting things that presentation I seen here in your today presentation actually. So we learn how to create a pipeline in the Power Platform, how to create an approval procedure for the developers, citizen developers, and app makers, and how we can approve the deployment, the deployed solution through the approval procedure, and how we can reject that solution. So
Yeah.
it was great. So I'm seeing that we have 3 question here. I'm going to put it in the screen so you can start answering the question. Jorge asked, hello, can I use something like this in GitHub or Terraform? And for example, using GitHub Actions.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the last step in the demo, you can of course extend the Power Platform pipelines using GitHub Actions. There is an interesting article about this here. I will show it. And of course, the process from here is a little bit different, but you can take this article and learn how to configure GitHub Actions to work with Power Platform pipelines. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And Marcelo asked this question: how much could the monthly cost in Azure be for this step for the setup per environment?
Yeah. So the cost is so the Power Platform pipelines application is for free. Yeah. So it is does not have an additional cost. You have to pay the different license for the users that use the environments. One of the things that we must be aware is that in the target environments, they need to be managed environments. So all the users in that environment must be premium users. So this is one of the things to take into account. So all the users must have a Power Apps Premium or Power Automate Premium license in that environment in order for this to be managed, and so in order to the pipelines can work. And about the Azure DevOps, uh, yeah, we only need the basic user license, at least one user. We need to have one basic user license to be able to configure the organization, the projects, and so on. But of course, if you use already DevOps, you must have this user. So I think there is no additional cost. About the cost you need to have to in order to use Power Platform and Azure DevOps.
Okay, awesome. So one question, I have a question. I think it might be the or attendees or other Power Platform learners question. So as you know, we have two type of pipeline in the Power Platform and Azure DevOps. So the question here, what's the advantage and disadvantage of using, the Power Platform pipeline or Azure DevOps pipeline? Not just for the approval process that uh, demonstrate to us, but from the scratch. So you mean
Yeah,
that sometimes the organization, the company or the clients, require that we set up the pipeline for their solution, and we need to, decide which pipeline is, sweet and fit with with the client requirement. Power
yeah.
Platform or the Azure DevOps pipeline?
Yeah, I think one of the most advantage is that the Power Platform pipeline is a Microsoft Power Platform product, so it's native.
Right.
Also, DevOps pipeline is a Microsoft product, but it's not only related to Power Platform. So I think now and in the future, they will put more development efforts into the Power
Hmm.
Platform pipelines. That's one of the things that I try always to use these new pipelines. Another thing, I think you can not in the beginning of the when Microsoft released the first version of these pipelines, it was so close. So you can do extend, you can't extend in any way. So now you have all the power of Power Automate to intercept the different stage and extend it. So you have seen how I connected the pipeline, native pipeline with the DevOps pipeline. So this opens you all the doors. So you can
Hmm.
do whatever you want in the DevOps pipeline for your organization needs. Meanwhile, the deployment is done through the Power Platform native pipeline. Also, another thing is that that Microsoft is doing internal validation of the solution, so it gets more stronger deployment from
Hmm.
development environment to the downstream environments using the native pipelines. I know already that in the near future they will allow us to select also the import type, the import mode. So now it is always an upgrade import. So we sometimes want to do an update import, which
Hmm.
is more quicker, is quicker than the upgrade. So for the moment, it's not possible, but in the near future will be possible. And yeah, my recommendation will be as soon as we can, by the organization restrictions, we can use the standard, the native deployment, and if we need, we can extend and connect DevOps pipelines, we can, of course, get the solution file that we are deploying in Power
Mhm.
Platform pipelines and do whatever we want to do here. We
Right.
also can do a pre-export step where we can maybe validate some internal things on the solution. And this
Right.
is very interesting to assure all the code quality and artifacts quality in our environment. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So, one more thing, everyone, before we leave the stage here. So, currently there is a Power Platform Copilot challenge that's running with through the Microsoft Learn. So, the challenge. You can join to this challenge. It started September 17th and it will be continue until the October 17, so you can test your skills and unlock the full potential of AI and Copilot in the Power Platform. Learn how to automate tasks and build smarter solution with AI assistant. So you can start, joining to this challenge today. The 26 days left until the end of the challenge. So it's a good opportunity for you to get a badge from this challenge and also learn a lot, around the Copilot in Power Platform. So thinking I think that there are 15 modules that you need to pass to get your badge for this challenge and also learn a lot around the Power Platform Copilot. That's it at my end, and thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, David, for your great session today. So I learned a lot around this session. I knew that the Power Platform pipeline. So today I learned about the approval procedure in the Power Platform pipeline. So it was a great point for me as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, would you share the link? Yes, this is the link. I'm going to put the challenge link in the chat for
Yeah.
our audience, so you can click on this link. Also, I shared the link in the I post the message in our LinkedIn page, so you can also check the link there. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend and see you next week with or another session with another special guest. Have a great day. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.